Greetings, ladies and Mendeljets, and welcome to this latest episode of Tales from Outer Space, where I take a space-related story from around the internet and read it out loud for your enjoyment. All the relevant links are down below. Please don't forget to do the usual YouTube gumph, because if you don't, the nanite swarms will steal your other sock. But more importantly, as always, I hope that you enjoy. I'd quickly like to thank the following Tier 5 patrons and channel members for supporting the channel: Datamagnet and Bob the Dragon. Thank you very much. Story number 1. I Had Never Believed, written by JDM5544. I never believed Thomas's claims. He always seemed to hold a negative view of his people, talking about atrocities that had scarred them for generations and the monsters that lurked amongst them. Not simply the actions of tyrants, but rather the actions of a common man. At first I feared that some other force took control of them. He spoke of being possessed, and I wondered if perhaps he was talking about the parasites or spirits. He quickly assured me that it was not what he meant. I then said that I knew of the criminals amongst the humans. Such beings existed in all species, I told him, and were nothing for him to feel true shame about. Again, he said I still didn't understand. It's not a little monster grabby, not until it is. I know that makes little sense, and I hope that you never see what I mean. But there is a monster that lives in each and every human being. It's a part of our fight or flight response to threats, and it causes us to do things far beyond what we're normally capable of. I've never seen a grabby. I've been it. But it doesn't matter. With luck, I'll never see it again, and you never will. So, it's about your military then? I asked for. I knew that Thomas had served with these people's military on one of their colonies. No, grabby. Quite the opposite. It's one of the things they try and train out of you in the military. But it never works. He would speak no more on the subject. He was a curious man, more than willing to indulge in my constant questioning of his people and their history, even more so after the call-up, a neighborhood boy who was eager to confirm or refute all the rumors about the newest member of the Alliance. Is it true that you eat other, even children? He once asked Thomas as he walked down the street, his poor eyes flickering in excitement as his mother's hair rose in a horrified embarrassment. Thomas turned to face the caller and got down to a single knee to look him in the top set of eyes and said, "Only when they ask rude questions without talking to their mothers first." Then opened his mouth wide while moving towards the caller, who squeaked in fear and quickly ran back. Thomas stood up, laughing and saying, "I'm kidding, of course, caller. And the answer is yes and no." Caller quickly turned back to face Thomas. What do you mean? Well, what do you mean? It's got to be one or the other, right? He said, confusion still obvious in his face. It is true that a small number of human cultures once practiced cannibalism, eating each other, he said, seeing the look on Caleb's face at the long, unusual word through his translator. But they were never large in number. And yes, it's true that one of our largest religions eats the flesh and drinks the blood of its main figure. It is, and has always been, completely symbolic. He had raised his voice so that the entire street could hear him speaking now more for them than for Caleb. And it is true that isolated cases of cannibalism continue to occur even today. In 90% of those situations, it is individuals who are mentally unstable. And in the other 10%, it is people who are in desperate situations who have no other choice. He continued to answer questions held by Caleb and the others while I went inside. He'd answered all these questions and more for me when I had agreed to sponsor him. Thomas was curious, as were all humans. He moved easily through the streets, a natural hunter's grace in every step. He wore weighted clothing, I knew, to help compensate for the lower gravity. He claimed that he wore so much more that he weighed 25% more in Shardak than he did on his home world to help him keep in shape. It was clear that he was stronger than most, and his endurance was envied by every athlete on the planet. His people were clearly warriors, as they had faced the enemy on their own for nearly 5 cycles. Despite all that, I saw no reason to fear him. They had shown themselves to be naught but honest allies. Until the invasion. The enemy ships specialized in raids designed explicitly to cause damage to civilian populations. Thomas called them terrorist attacks, claiming the purpose was simply to spread fear and stretch resources. They were successful in both aspects. Upon hearing the alarm sound, I immediately began to flee to the shelter. These raids typically targeted large population centers, but rarely used penetrator rounds. As such, simply taking shelter below ground is often enough to survive. Thomas follows me, and as we exit the building, we are greeted by a horrifying sight. The Gormia. The Gormia are suicide troops of the enemy. They are considered a living dead, disgraced warriors who hope to pass into the afterlife with some semblance of honor. They are utterly ruthless and are known to kill 5 or more soldiers before dying. One held Kalrap by his skull, holding his sidearm between his eyes. Kalrap's mother was dead behind him. 4 others stood around, waiting. To my right, I see Thomas rushing towards the Gormia, roaring, a sound so primal, I at first thought it was a war beast had been unleashed. In a way, one had. The Gormia immediately looked up at the sound, and I saw them step back, dropping Kalrap as they did so. I heard the leader begin warbling in his strange tongue. I knew enough to know that they were afraid, but of what I did not know yet. They opened fire at Thomas. Their beams streaked across his skin, crossing in a pattern of red. His skin began to burn and bubble almost instantly. Even so, he did not slow down. Thomas threw his body at the Gormia leader, pinning him to the ground, and took a hold of the knife at his belt and thrusting it under the leader's neckplate, killing him instantly. Thomas then took the leader's sidearm and streaked it across the Gormia's faceplate, blinding them before removing his knife and throwing himself at the closest enemy, burying the knife between his ribs. Pushing himself back to his feet, Thomas took a hold of the second Gormia's weapon and aimed it directly at the third, who had only just begun to recover from the attack, burning through his armor at such a close range, and dispatching the fourth in the same way. The entire exchange had taken less than 45 Earth seconds. At the end, Thomas looked at me, and a sword in his eyes, the beast that he had warned me about. Kalrap ran to his sister, who hid herself behind me. Thomas continued to hold my gaze before abruptly turning and running off into the city, towards the sounds of screaming and combat. I had never believed Thomas when he said I should fear humans. I never believed that the enemy could be stopped either. Thomas had changed both of those beliefs. End of story. Story number 2. Why Did I Ask? Written by Admiral Marsupial 3. Mal gave everything one last check, making sure the interface between her state-of-the-art medical ship and the pre-FTL relic that were connected to was working perfectly. This wasn't as hard as it sounded. It was definitely a technological and scientific achievement, no doubt. But it had been done so many times that most of the decent ships in the Milky Way could find a compatible program on Galnet, along with a tutorial of how to operate it with their particular hardware. What made this one even easier is that this relic was actually only 30 years old. Mal started the system up and began the process of reviving the 25,000 humans sleeping peaceably aboard the colony ship. She turned to a human colleague, Trevor, to ask a question that she can't believe she hadn't asked before. How many of these are out there? We found over 400 million of your people in the last 30 years. You're the only species that we had first contact with by sleeper ship. Trevor was just a scientist, so he wasn't privy to any more than the official public statement on the matter. Due to the turbulent times between the first confirmed colony ship launch in 2087 and the unification 40 years before developing FTL travel, it was impossible to know the total number. But our analysis shows that it couldn't be more than 500 million people. It sounded logical, but it sounded illogical when they said that it couldn't be higher than 20 million, and 50 million. Then 100 million, and so on, and so on. Just because Trevor wasn't privy to extra information didn't mean he didn't have a theory. Mom would end up wishing that she hadn't asked. So, you know how during the 20th century our population doubled every 40 years? Well, it slowed a bit in the 21st century, but was still going up way too high. Mol thought back to a human history familiarization course. Yeah, but you stabilized it by the late 21st century, according to your historical records. Trevor chuckled and looked at Mol in a way that made her realize that he didn't believe that in the slightest, before continuing. Yeah, you may want to look closer at those numbers. It didn't just slow down, but it stopped in the 2070s, and then stayed that way until we colonized Mars and a few large moons around Saturn and Jupiter 70 years later. It then just over doubled again in 30 years, then stayed that way until we discovered FTL travel. Now it's doubled again in the 20 years since we did, as soon as space and resources weren't an issue. As a wave of realization started to wash over Mol, she uttered, I don't like where this is going. Trevor smirked slightly, sensing that she was beginning to click onto the true story, and asked Mol a question that she didn't really want to consider. Do you think that we stopped breeding like we always have? Does that add up to 500 million people to you? Mol ran rough sums in her head, even though she was sure that she really didn't want to know. It took you 450 more years to develop FTL travel from 2070. That means 10.5 billion at the rate of doubling every 50 years for 70 years, then increased to 22.5 billion over 30 years, then at a rate of doubling again every 50 years, conservatively, for another 350 years. Oh. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you do, please consider supporting the author, even by popping over and leaving a thumbs up or a nice comment, just to show your appreciation for the story. However, if you wish to support this channel, there are links down below which will help immensely. I will see you all in the next one, and until then, I hope that you have a fantastic day. Cheers.